Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please rise for the singing of the national anthem, followed by a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Ready, Ms. Defoe, whenever you are.
Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof?
Seeing none.
Item 3 is adoption of the minutes with a recommendation that the minutes of the regular meeting of council dated August 12, 2019 be adopted as printed.
Moved by Councillor Ritzma, seconded by Councillor Ingram. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried.
There is no addendum to be added to the agenda. Moving on to Section 5, report of the Committee of the Whole in-camera session. And at the August 12, 2019 session, applications to the Town and Gown Advisory Committee were considered with a motion that Randy Redner be appointed as a Stratford Chef School representative to the Town and Gown Committee for a 2-year term until November 30th, 2021, or until a successor is appointed, and that bylaw 178-2018 be further amended.
Moved by Councillor Ritzma, seconded by Councillor Henderson. Discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried.
And just prior to this evening's meeting, an in-camera session was held to consider a matter relating to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or on behalf of the municipality, and a matter relating to labor relations or employee negotiations. At the in-camera section, direction was given on the first item.
Thank you.
Section 6 is hearing of deputations and presentation, and item 6.1 is a presentation by the Ad Hoc Citizens Committee on Council Remuneration, with a motion that Kimberly Richardson, Chair of the Committee, be heard.
Moved by Councillor Beattie, seconded by Councillor Burback, that Ms. Richardson be heard. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Was that the best way? Okay, that's cool. Thank you, Tatiana. Okay, I'm going to forewarn you that if I move around a bit, it's because I hurt my foot. And so I thought it was better to put on better shoes than wearing my hiking boots. So it didn't go well with the outfit. So anyways, that's my precursor for this evening. So good evening, Mayor Matheson and members of council, and thank you for allowing us to take time out of your schedule to present our report on council remuneration. So just to kind of go over as to who the members of the committee were. So you chose well, and when you selected these, the 5 of us for this task, our vast experience proved to be invaluable as we worked through the data and analysis of vast amounts of information to arrive at our recommendations. So our vice chair is Bob Malkinson. And he's a former newspaper publisher and executive with Thomson Newspapers for at least 20 years, and he spent the last 18 years of his business career as the CEO and general manager of the Greater Oshawa Chamber of Commerce, retiring from the daily routine in March of 2016 to put his many years of experience into private consulting and spend more time with his family. Next up is Derek Averill, and he's a retired CPA. He was the VP of Finance and Operation for Golden Books Publishing from 1974 to 2001, and he was responsible for accounting, finance, human resources, and operations. He was also Divisional Controller, Engineering, Planning, and Environment for the County of Simcoe from 2002 to 2018, and he was responsible at that time for approximately $67 million in operating and $70 million in capital annually. He retired and moved to Stratford in 2018. Barry Jessen is a lifelong resident of Stratford. He's been involved with minor sports for many years, and he held supervisory roles in manufacturing, and he is now retired. Jeff Skabobius is a chartered accountant with Fahm & Company. He's a senior partner and has been accounting for over 30 years. In addition to his client duties, he also assists with the human resources function, and he also has a significant volunteer experience with the not-for-profit and charitable level. And for myself, I've been in human resources for over 15 years. I've been involved with all aspects of HR. I've been involved with 2 plant startups here in Stratford for Japanese automotive suppliers. And related to this project specifically, I have developed and implemented compensation strategies, new benefit and pension plans, and managed departmental budgets both in the private and the public sector. So I think we're pretty good to do this. So what was our focus? Well, we were to review and provide recommendations on mayor and council remuneration, giving consideration to related benefits and pension. This reflects the council direction. It was also understood that as part of this process, we would also come up with how to deal with the 1/3 tax-free exemption for mayor and council remuneration. In June of 2018, Council was given information regarding the impending change of the elimination of the federal tax exemption, and that provided for this, provided you with tax-free dollars. And then in August of 2018, you recommended that staff bring back options for conducting a full review of council remuneration, including remuneration for mayor, benefits, and pension. In September of 2018, you recommended, council recommended that an ad hoc committee be established with the mandate, and then in December of 2018, after the election, you appointed our members, and then we met for the first time in January of 2019. Over the course of the last 8 months, we have met 9 times, and I would say that we probably have put in about collectively between 60 and 80 hours of our own time putting this all together. So what were our key considerations? Well, of course, we had to deal with the impact of the 1/3 exemption and how that was going to, what we needed to do with that. We also had to determine the review process. And so what we did was we set a foundation for remuneration review and analysis. Then we looked at what the different resources were that we needed to access for information. And we also had to establish comparators for who we should be looking at in regards to being similar to Stratford. So we use the AMCTO, and for those who aren't aware, that's the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario. And on every once in a while, they put together a report on what council remuneration should be or could be. We also selected the appropriate municipal comparators. So we started off with 7, ended up with 2. And we also looked at the historical data. So that was from the time in 2007. When the last ad hoc committee was put together to review council remuneration and structure at that time. And then we also wanted to take a look at financial indicators just because, one, we can't pay we can't absorb a huge amount of dollars, but we wanted to look at the size of council, the estimated cost relative to municipal population and the number of households, and of course what the impact was going to be on the tax levy. So this is what the current state is. So this is based on base pay. So the mayor is at $66,869. There is no per diem for that. And the appointed deputy mayor, which is a $1,500 and one additional, you get paid more for having that position. That was in 2007, and it's kept up with inflation because it's been indexed to CPI, so it's about $1,700. The base pay has always been increased since 2007 when the last review was taken place, and it's been affected by CPI every year. And the current impact to the tax levy is 0.394%. Oh, I said that wrong, didn't I? It's 0.394, or did I say that? I don't know. Anyway, sorry. The other thing that I just wanted to make mention of is that the per diem, I need to go back here, sorry. The per diem amount that was calculated for the deputy mayor, as well as the per councillor rate, that was determined based on an estimated 6 meetings at $60 over the period of 12 months, and that's where that 4320 came from. The 12,141 was the original number was about $10,000 in 2007, and again, it's been indexed for CPI. And so then we've estimated that the total wages per councillor about $16,461. We do realize that more people go to more meetings, and so those numbers fluctuate, but we had to kind of do a comparison to apples as the best that we could. The one thing to note is that the current per diems for less than 3 hours is $60, and for meetings that are more than 3 hours in one day are $90. Also, council has the ability to purchase into the into the group benefit plan with the city, but that's at your own cost. And the tax levy percentage, the tax levy is based on a, the tax levy percentage is based on a total tax base of about 59 million. So how do we go about managing the 1/3 tax-free exemption? Well, what we did was we had to look at what everybody else was doing as well. So that was kind of really was very crucial for that. So we contemplated 2 options. One was no change in remuneration. So each councillor would bear the cost of the elimination of the 1/3, or we keep the net pay the same. And what we did was we decided that it was not council's problem that the government eliminated the cash, or the tax-free exemption. So therefore, we put forth a recommendation that that we increase the pay levels so that everyone would be at what they were before the 1/3 tax-free exemption was put into place. So the net impact is 0.022% of the tax levy, which is about $12,758 to be more exact. Any questions? Okay, I'll keep going. Okay, so what we do is we submit 3 recommendations to implement our 3 options for you to consider to implement this recommendation. The one is to make the change retroactive to January 1st of 2019. This is the fairest method of correcting the loss in net pay. The second one is to make the change effective January 1st of 2020, and this allows for the increase to be included in your budget for 2020. And the third is to implement the recommendation immediately upon approval with no retroactive pay applicable. Options 2 and 3 would result in council members personally absorbing the loss in net pay. I know this chart is really small to see, but I'll just kind of go through what the highlights are. So what we did was, in order to compare apples to apples with the other municipalities had already put into place what they were doing for the 1/3 exemption at the beginning of the year. So all of the numbers that we received in our analysis were actually, they actually included that 1/3 piece. So we thought we better put that in as well so that we could see, so everybody could kind of see what the actual numbers are. So you can see that by increasing the 1/3, the mayor goes from 66.8 to 77.2. And then at Woodstock's at 68.6, and St. Thomas is at 64.7. The deputy mayor would be about 18.6 compared to 31.1, and the St. Thomas actually does not have a deputy mayor. None of the municipality, or Stratford does not provide benefits. As I said, it's all on your own cost. But the actual, in Woodstock, they're at 12.25% in lieu of, based on a councillor base pay, which works out to be about $3,520. And then in St. Thomas, the approximate cost of benefits is about $6,000 or $2,000 in lieu of. So we kind of had to make some assumptions that we assumed 2/3 took benefits and 1/3 took the one in lieu of. And I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention about council. So council's wages would be at 16,600 compared to Woodstock at 28,700 and St. Thomas at 24,200. So no pension across the board for the comparators as well as within Stratford. And then you can see what the total compensation numbers are there, including what the cost of benefits are for St. Thomas and for Woodstock. We also wanted to point out too about the size of council, just in regards to similar sized municipalities, but Stratford does have significantly more members of council and with mayor and deputy as well. Fire away, Bonnie. Go ahead.
I just have a question. Under the total composition, I'm assuming it's just typo. The mayor says 66,689, but up above it says it's 869. Looks like a transposition of figures.
You are correct.
And
Yes.
council's the same way. It says 16,461 at the top, but at the bottom it says 16,641. So
Thank you for pointing that out.
I'm
but
thinking the total compensation are both just trans.
Correct.
Okay.
You got it. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay.
We missed that. So what factors did we consider in the analysis? Well, the last review date, as mentioned, was 2007. We determined that city councillors are significantly undercompensated relative to the comparators. We have more councillors per household and a higher level of engagement based on our existing structure. Mayor's remuneration with net pay status quo is competitive salary relative to the comparators. A full salary versus per diem and the link to governance structure is different when you look at the comparator municipalities. And 75% of municipalities was 25,000 to 49,900 is provide a comprehensive salary instead of a per diem model. So what were the options that we are putting forth to you? And please take note that these do include the 1/3, okay? Just again for that comparison piece. So our first suggestion is to go to leave the mayor at the 77,212, and that includes the 1/3 tax-free exemption. And then with councillors at 12,300, then moving up to 19,958, and then plus per diems would bring the total up to 24,278. How we came up with that number is we estimated the total compensation midpoint of 30,610 from the two comparison municipalities. We took away the per diem, and then we took away the estimated cost of benefits based on what the other municipalities would be receiving, which worked out to be about 19,958. And then by adding in the 4320 again, that's where that number of 24,278 comes from. Okay, the base pay would still be subject to annual inflation increases based on CPI, and then the differential for the deputy mayor is $1,710. So option 2 includes an additional set amount of $4,000 for group health and dental. So what we did was we looked at what the average cost again was for the city of Stratford, how much the city pays for their team members to have benefits, as well as what the average cost was for Woodstock and St. Thomas, and that's where we came up with that $4,000 number. When we come to option 3, what we've done is we've taken that $4,000 in lieu of and we built that into the base pay. So therefore, that's where that 23,000 comes from, as well as adding in the per diems of 4320 brings it up to 28,278. So the big thing is about what is the impact to the tax levy, and so with that, if you choose option 1, it's the impact is about 0.128%. If you choose option 2 or 3, it's 0.202%, and we talked about doing a phased-in approach, just because that would probably be a lot easier to manage through the budgetary process. So what additional considerations did we talk about and would like council to consider is to ensure that you have an effective and transparent and fiscally responsible governance structure to represent its citizens and taxpayers. So we recommend allocating funds for the upcoming budget for a governance review, and that study would consider the comparators and municipalities of similar population when reviewing your current structure, how many committee meetings, what your committee structure is, the number of meetings that each councillor attends, the number of meetings that you have, and council representation on all of those committees. There are 37 committees that this council has, and in comparison to the other municipalities, it is significantly more. So that's why we determined it's a very engaged community. from that standpoint, but it does also, it's a lot of work, and maybe it's not necessarily what what council should be doing, right? So that's up to you guys to decide that. So in summary, the committee has made recommendations to resolve the loss and resolve the loss of pay from the tax change, with separate recommendations to correct the disparity in council remuneration versus with comparable municipalities. We've also provided you with options for consideration with respect to other remuneration issues. And then we appreciate your confidence in us completing this sensitive task. And we also want to thank you very much for all of the work and your experience and that you do for the city of Stratford, as well as considering our recommendations. We do recognize that the council compensation can be a contentious issue, and we've endeavored to review remuneration levels that were commensurate with the execution of those duties, as well as a fair and competitive to encourage local residents to consider running for office. The council has made recommendations to resolve, we've already said that, so we don't need to say that again. Okay. And so I just wanted to thank the members of the committee, because we spent a lot of time together, so we got to know each other quite well. And it's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to working with you again, gentlemen. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions, Councillor Henderson?
Bonnie?
Yes, my understanding was in the 2019 budget, it was already put in the budget, the projection of an increase to councillors for the third compensation.
Mr. Humble?
Through the chair, no, that wasn't one of the assumptions we made. What we did budget for was just the CPI increase that takes effect each year.
Okay. Councillor Ingram?
Thank you. That was a lot of information that you just kind of plowed right on through. So thank you to you and your committee. My question is related to the per diems and the factor of the 4320 that you've made the assumption on. So I understand why you did that and how you achieved that. But my question is around fairness in terms of council members and the number of committees they sit on, because if I'm Bonnie, Councillor Henderson sits on perhaps a dozen extra committees compared to my 6. So when I'm getting the same 4320 that she's getting, there's a fairness and equity disparity there.
So this is just for putting together the actual numbers for comparison purposes within the report. So what you actually do is what you're going to get paid. Okay, so this was specifically just to say, okay, we need an apples to apples comparison, and the only way we could do it was assume that everybody goes to the same number of meetings, does the same amount of work, all that kind of stuff, because otherwise we could have one person that has, you know, $6,000 of per diems and somebody else has $2,000 worth of per diems, and then it doesn't work. So we had to come up with something.
Thank you.
Sorry. If I did not explain that well, I apologize.
That's okay.
Councillor
Thanks.
Clifford?
Kimberly, I was going to ask, if I was self-employed and I had income, I could write off my travel expenses to where I'm going and my house, we don't have an office here, so when my wife was self-employed, I used to write off part of my house, and was that taken into consideration, Paul?
No, we couldn't, because we had to look as if each person was only making $12,000 or $12,000 a year, because there's no way we can look at each person's situation is completely different. So we had to look at as if you had no other income except for this one. It was too complicated, and that would be getting into too much personal information that we didn't need or shouldn't have.
Any other questions? Motion to receive and refer to Finance and Admin, Councillor Clifford and Councillor Gaffney. All in favor? Opposed, nay? Thank you. Kimberly and the committee members, thank you so much for your time, and we greatly appreciate the report. Thank you.
That's great. Have a great night, guys.
Next item.
Moving on to Section 7, Orders of the Day. Item 7.1 is correspondence from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, which has scheduled a municipal budget workshop on Friday, September 6th. The workshop is intended as an early budget planning discussion to assist in preparation of the 2020 draft budget. Members of council are encouraged to attend, and members and staff wishing to attend are asked to make arrangement with the CAO's office.
At this time, it's been postponed. We just received that today, so.
So moving on to item 7.2, acceptance of quote, with a staff recommendation that the contract for fire alarm upgrades at 329 Jones Street, St. Mary's, and 645 Dairy Street, Listowel, be awarded to Motion Electrical Contracting Limited for the amount of $174,866, including HST, and that the mayor and clerk or their designates be authorized to sign the necessary contract agreement.
Moved by Counselor Henderson, second by Counselor Ritzma. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 7.3 is an acceptance of proposal with the staff recommendation that council approve Scion Coulter Corporation to be retained for consulting services for the Facility Condition Assessment, RFP, at a cost of $50,930, excluding HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary contract agreement.
Moved by Counselor Bunting, second by Counselor Vasilakos, that the contract be awarded. Discussion. If not, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 7.4 is a proclamation with a motion that October 20th to 26th, 2019 be proclaimed as Spiritual and Religious Care Awareness Week in the city of Stratford.
Moved by Counselor Clifford, seconded by Counselor Seven. Discussion. Counselor Vasilakos.
We usually have some information attached with these requests that explain the purpose of them and what they're about. In this particular case, we have no information to go on who's asking for it, why the organization. It's usually that we have some letter of request.
And there was one, it was from the Ontario Multi-Faith Association, but I'm not sure what's happened to it, but it's similar to what we passed other years. Is the will of council to proclaim tonight or wait 2 weeks until you can see?
No, I don't mind proclaiming. I'm just saying, usually we see something that explains what and how.
No problem. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried.
There was no business for which previous notice was given, so moving on to Section 9, reports of the Standing Committee. Item 9.1 is the report of the Infrastructure, Transportation, and Safety Committee, and there are 3 items listed for consideration. Item 9.1.1, which is the closure of TJ Dolan, that council proceed to give public notice that the city is to consider a bylaw to close TJ Dolan Drive from St. Vincent Street South to St. David Street. Item 9.1.2, that the traffic and parking bylaw be further amended to address housekeeping matters as listed on the agenda. And item 9.1.3 is a crossing guard request that staff be authorized to proceed to install a 35-meter sidewalk on the north side of Simcoe Street, and that staff be authorized to install a crossing guard, necessary signage, and markings at the Simcoe and Morgan Street intersection in September 2019.
Moved by Counselor Vasilakos, second by Counselor Burback. Discussion. Not all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 9.2 is the report of the Planning and Heritage Committee, and there are 3 items listed for consideration as follows. Item 9.2.1, that the request by the Hub Fine Food and Market Butchery to permit a fascia sign on the upper story of 33 Marketplace be denied, as it does not satisfy the criteria of a section in the sign bylaw. Item 9.2.2, that in accordance with the Planning Act and in conformity with the official plan, the pre-planning application consultation bylaw, which requires applicants to consult with the city prior to submitting certain applications, be adopted. That Schedule B of the fees and charges bylaw be amended as shown, and that Schedule B to bylaw 25-2004, being a bylaw to establish a tariff of fees for the processing of applications made in respect of planning matters, be repealed. And item 9.2.3, that council receive the demolition control bylaw report for information, and that council approve the demolition control bylaw.
Counselor Ingram moving, seconded by Counselor Ritzma. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 9.3 is report of the Finance and Labor Relations Committee, and there are 2 items listed for consideration. Item 9.3.1 is a delegation of authority on tax matters, that the Treasurer, Supervisor of Tax Revenue, and the Assessment Review Board be delegated authority on tax matters as outlined on the agenda. And item 9.3.2, that the report of the Director of Corporate Services regarding operating budget variance report be received for information.
Counselor Clifford moving, second Counselor Bunting. Discussion. Not all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Section 10 is notice of intent, and item 10.1 is a notice of a public meeting. Notice is hereby given that Stratford City Council will hold a public meeting under the Retail Business Holidays Act at 7 p.m. on Monday, September 23rd in the council chamber to hear the application from Value Village Stores for an exemption to allow the store located at 925 Ontario Street to open on defined holidays during the designated tourism season in Stratford. Any person may attend this public meeting to make written or oral comments with respect to this application. Alternatively, written comments may be submitted to the acting clerk by August 31st.
Thank you.
Item 11 is reading of the bylaws, and there are 9 bylaws listed for consideration. Item 11.1 is to amend bylaw 135-2017 to delegate council's authority to the treasurer, supervisor of tax revenue, and the assessment review board regarding certain tax matters, and under the Planning Act to the chief building official and city clerk with respect to issuance and refusal of demolition permits for residential properties. Item 11.2 is to amend the traffic and parking bylaw to make housekeeping amendments. Item 11.3 is to authorize the acceptance of the quote and the undertaking of the work by Motion Electrical Contracting Limited for the fire alarm upgrades. Item 11.4 is to adopt a bylaw designating an area of demolition control and the requirement for a permit for demolition of residential buildings. Item 11.5 is to amend a bylaw to appoint a Stratford Chef School representative to the Town and Gown Committee. Item 11.6 is to adopt a pre-consultation bylaw to require applicants to consult with the city prior to submission of a development application. Item 11.7 is to amend the fees and charges bylaw to reflect amended planning services fees. Item 11.8 is to repeal Schedule B of bylaw 25-2004, which established a tariff of fees for the processing of applications made in respect to planning matters. And item 11.9 is to authorize the acceptance of the proposal and the undertaking of the work by Sion Coulter Corporation for consulting services for the facility condition assessment. And these items can be taken collectively upon unanimous vote of council present.
Moved by Councillor Beatty, second by Councillor Burback, that bylaws 11.1 through 9 be taken collectively. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously, so we'll go to first and second reading. Councillor Henderson, moving, second by Councillor Bunting for bylaws 11.1 through 11.9. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Third and final reading, Councillor Gaffney, seconded by Councillor Clifford. That bylaws 11.1 through 9 be passed. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Moving on to section 12, consent agenda. Are there any consent agenda items to be considered by council?
Seeing none, we'll go to new business.
Are there any new business items?
Councillor Ingram?
Yes, I'm just going to my notes here. I did have a resident ask me, and I don't recall from the plan for the new bus terminal, did we have bike racks that were going to be installed there?
Mr. St. Louis?
Actually, I believe, through the chair, I believe there is one bike rack there already, but if not, Parks has extra, we can put them in.
That would be great, yes, thank you. And then my second item is the rec complex parking lot redesign. Do we have an update on that?
Mr. St. Louis?
That would be a report coming to council by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Henderson?
I just, I know Gary Golding is in the audience and like to invite everybody to the, I think it's the 5th annual Stratford and Labor Council picnic, and it's on the Monday from September 2nd, from 12 to 3? 12 to 3, and it's all free for everyone to come and enjoy it at the Upper Queens Park.
Thank you, Bonnie. Anything further? Motion to recess, and we'll convene immediately in finance. Councillor Clifford and Councillor Gaffney. All those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Clifford, whenever you're ready.
Call to order the Finance and Labor Relations Committee. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Note it. 5, report of the Stratford Economic Enterprise Development Corporation, and we have a subcommittee recommendation that the Stratford Economic Enterprise Development Corporation 2019 quarterly update and 2018 annual report dated August 12, 2019 be received as information. Moved by Councillor Beatty, seconded by Councillor Burbach. Questions, comments? Call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Item 6 is the presentation by the Stratford Festival Country Award Committee, and the subcommittee recommended that a community grant in the sum of $500 be given to the Country Award Committee to be funded from the 2019 contingency fund. Moved by Councillor Ritzma, seconded by Councillor Bunting. Questions, comments? All in favor? That's unanimous. 6.2, preliminary 2020 budget discussions. And the subcommittee's recommendation that the report of the Director of Corporate Services dated 12th of August 2019 regarding the financial impact of reduced provincial grant funding on the city's 2020 budget be received for information. Moved by Councillor Gaffney, seconded by Councillor Seven. Questions, comments? Tomorrow night we'll be talking about this a lot more, so we can save it for then or talk now. Anyways, all in favor? That's unanimous. 6.3, the 2020 budget discussion, provincial grants to improve service delivery and efficiencies. And we have a report that the report of the Director of Corporate Services dated 12th August 2019 regarding provincial grant to improve service delivery and efficiency be received for information that the council indicate other priorities for staff to investigate operational and financially. And again, tomorrow night we'll do that. The motion by Councillor Burbach and Councillor Baslasco will second it. Questions, comments? Bonnie?
Did we actually apply for this grant? Because I was reading one of their reports that they said only 20 municipalities have actually even applied for it.
I'll give that to our director.
Through the chair, no, that would have been a different grant. This was non-application based. It was just a grant that was sent to us by the province. And all Ontario municipalities.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you, that's unanimous. Item 6.4, the subcommittee's recommendation that the report of the Director of Corporate Services, 12th of August 2019 regarding new initiatives and service levels, changes for inclusion in the 2020 budget be received for information, and that 2 meetings of the Finance and Labor Relation Committee be convened on the 27th of August, and a date to be determined for another date to be determined for pre-budget discussion with staff. And that the Finance and Labor Relation Committee provide input to identify initiatives that they wish to see included in the 2020 draft budget proposal. Moved by Councillor Burbach, seconded by Councillor Baslasco. Questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you, it's unanimous. And the report of the STA, the subcommittee's recommendation that Stratford Tourist Alliance report dated August 12, 2019 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Henderson, second by Councillor Bunting. Questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you. Everything else is for information.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, sorry.
I would wonder if that's item 8.1, because it's a recommendation made by subcommittee, should the recommendation not now come to the full committee to ask staff for a report?
I think tomorrow we're talking about it, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to bring it tomorrow, and then at that time, we could.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Ingram, Councillor Burbach, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you. Council reconvene, Madam Clerk.
Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest made at standing committee and to be restated at the reconvene portion?
Seeing none.
Through you, Your Worship, it's my understanding the final item is the confirmatory bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Kazalakos and seconded by Counselor Ingram, the bylaw 1110, the confirmatory bylaw, be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Third and final time. Moved by Counselor Burback and seconded by Counselor Gaffney. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting. Counselor Seven. Thank you. And Counselor Bunting, and it's to reconvene in camera. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. We'll stand in recess for 5 minutes.